Welcome to College Smart Radio, helping you bring into focus the true cost of college and how to tackle the runaway cost of financing a college education. College Smart Radio is hosted by Beatrice Schultz, a certified financial planner and founder of West Face College Planning. Now, here's your host for College Smart Radio, Beatrice Schultz.
Welcome to College Smart Radio. Our society has now crossed a new value threshold when it comes to college. Never before have we debated so aggressively if college is worth the investment, and now we are. And why is that? Because college costs have become so unreasonable. On today's College Smart Radio program, I'll be discussing the dangers of the high tuition, high discount model that colleges are using with a college president who is doing something about it. The University of the South, familiarly known as Sewanee, under the leadership of Dr. John McCardell, has implemented major changes to the traditional pricing model to make a first-rate education more accessible for more families. Hi, I'm Beatrice Schultz. Welcome to our weekly show, College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of a college education. Our show is all about bringing up-to-date and practical advice to parents who are dealing with the cost of a college education for their kids. With many traditional private schools costing well over $60,000 a year, a UC costing $35,000, and a California State University running $25,000, parents need more help than ever. We bring you that help by sharing ways to pay less, tapping into financial aid, and prioritizing your source of funds to make sure you get through the most expensive years of your life. Based on my own education and experience, I share my insights with you week in and week out. I hold a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemical Engineering and a Master's degree in International Business. I am a certified financial planner and the owner of the San Carlos-based college planning business, West Face College Planning. I host workshops and webinars on college planning and consult with parents on a daily basis. And in addition to my insights, I bring in experts in many areas of the college process, from educators, counselors, financial professionals, admission officers, parents, and even students. You'll learn firsthand the ins and outs of how to pay for college and survive financially. In addition to our show, you can find lots of powerful information at our website, collegesmartradio.com. We have many articles that I've authored with up-to-date information on navigating the waters of paying for the runaway costs of college. We have a monthly e-newsletter full of content about college planning. We also have posted a glossary of key terms used in the world of college planning, terms like need-based aid, merit-based aid, FAFSA, and so forth. And we have a link to our free community parent workshops and webinars that I host to teach parents about how to pay for college and how the financial aid system really works. Now let's get into today's show. Many private colleges have been in a financial aid arms race for years now, offering bigger and bigger merit scholarships to lure the best students. This is nice for the students who get the big merit scholarships, but it's not so nice for everyone else. Colleges have to come up with the money for those merit scholarships somehow, and they've done it in part by raising tuition. This is not a sustainable situation if what they're trying to do is utilize the limited resources that they have to educate all the students. My guest on today's College Smart Radio program is Dr. John McCardell Jr., President Emeritus of Middlebury College and 6th Vice Chancellor of the University of the South, also known as Sewanee. John is a distinguished historian and respected national leader in liberal arts education. He's a graduate of Washington and Lee University and did his graduate work at the Johns Hopkins University and then at Harvard University, where he received his PhD in history. His specialty is U.S. history in the 19th century, with special emphasis on the South and on American historiography. Since his arrival at Sewanee in 2010, Dr. McCardell has challenged the university to seize today's opportunities to fulfill its vision of being a nationally prominent university located in the South. And he's also challenged the conventional wisdom about the cost, the price, and the value of higher education. I'm delighted to have John as a guest on College Smart Radio today. He's joining us via phone from the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee. Hi, John. Welcome to College Smart Radio.
It's great to be with you, Beatrice. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. Many of our listeners are not familiar with Sewanee, so I thought maybe you could take a couple minutes and familiarize us with the university and where you're located.
Sure. We are located on the Cumberland Plateau in south-central Tennessee, about equally distant between Chattanooga and Nashville. We were founded in 1857 by a group of bishops in the Episcopal Church who envisioned creating a great national university at the time. We currently occupy 13,000 acres, which, if the Civil War had not intervened, could well now be, in fact, the home of a comprehensive national university. But, of course, the war, or as we call it here in the South, the late unpleasantness, intervened, and the vision, the grand vision that the founders had back in the 1850s had to be adjusted. But the university reopened its doors in 1868. It consists today of an undergraduate residential liberal arts college that enrolls about 1,500 students, plus a school of theology, one of several seminaries in the Episcopal Church. We are still an Episcopal institution, and that heritage is an important part of who we are and what we do. And we offer graduate work as well in our School of Letters, which awards a master's degree in literature. But we're primarily a residential undergraduate liberal arts college, which happens to have produced, we think, the largest number of Rhodes Scholars per capita among our living alum than any other school. We've had 26 Rhodes Scholars in our history, out of a group of about 15,000 alumni. I will stand corrected by those who want to have a better percentage, but we're pretty proud of that fact, and I think that's indicative of the kind of place the university is.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think many people, what I often find, especially with kids here in the Bay Area and the families that are listening to the show, we often don't families don't open up their options to the colleges that are available that could be similarly priced or even better priced, and a better or similar or different or, I should say, unique educational experience. So I love to introduce my families to some different colleges, and thank you so much for being part of the show and sharing that about Sewanee.
Thank you. Our students come from all over the country, and we have Californians here, and we'd love to have a few more.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about some of what you've done at Sewanee regarding cost, price, and the value of education.
Well, I've been, as you said in your very generous introduction, a college president for quite a while, 13 years at Middlebury, and now in my third year here at Sewanee. And one of the things that I've noticed over time, particularly over the last decade or so, is an increasing reliance among colleges like ours on what you correctly referred to as the high tuition, high discount approach. And that has been the result of a number of factors, but the consequence of that decision has been, for many of us, we are less able than we were at one time to meet the full need of individual students in favor of offering awards of various sizes to students who probably don't need the financial aid, but whom we try to lure by discounting our tuition rate. This is, you quite correctly describe, as an arms race. It's an arms race in which those of us who are participating have limited resources. It is, in my view, really neither the most efficient nor the most just way of allocating those resources, and it has created among families this sense that if we bicker and dicker long enough and hard enough, we might be able to get a better deal. The consequence of that is a great deal of confusion about the actual price of a degree of tuition, and of the fact that, as I mentioned before, we are less able to meet the full need of those students in need. It has also created, I think, a misleading sense that those students with need who receive aid are, in some sense, not meritorious. Need and merit are not mutually exclusive, and yet this term merit scholarship, which really means non-need financial aid, has made this comparison invidious. What we've done at Sewanee is to try to cut through all of that. We made a decision 2 years ago to cut our sticker price, to cut our tuition by 10% across the board. It didn't take 3 paragraphs to explain. You don't have to read it 3 times to determine if you qualify. We then froze that tuition for entering students in the current year, and next year we will move to a tiered system of tuition so that the price you are charged when you enter as a freshman is a price that will be guaranteed for 4 years. I'll admit this is a modest adjustment. It still is a pricey degree, but among the liberal arts colleges with whom we compete, we are, I believe, and it can be verified, the value proposition. Not only that, we believe that therefore makes a Sewanee education more affordable and accessible. It will allow us to get back to meeting full need for every admitted student, and not incidentally will allow families to plan because they'll just need to multiply by 4 what they're charged their first year.
I think, John, that the simple fact of the reducing your sticker price by 10%, but also guaranteeing that tuition, and actually, I think you said that, or I think I read on your website, the majority of students actually live on campus at Sewanee. Is that correct?
We are a very small community, and we are essentially 100% residential. We live together, we dine together, and so community is a very important thing for us.
So when we talk about the tiered pricing, would that include the cost of living those additional years also?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
That's a great question. It is tuition, room, and board. It's all in.
It is a huge deal for families that don't recognize us who are listening to the show right now, because it is not uncommon that the cost of college is going up by 3 to 6% a year and higher in some colleges. So that's a big thing to manage if it costs $40,000 a year and it's going to be an extra couple thousand the second year, more the third year, and oftentimes there's financial awards that are offered over 4 years, but they become less valuable when the fourth year you've got to borrow another $10,000 to make up the difference.
Well, that's a great point, and many schools which engage in this merit aid game may not tell you that that merit award will be frozen even if the tuition is not.
Which is what I believe I see with most colleges. Is that what you think is going on, though, that the merit aid does get frozen, and commonly there's not more added on to those to the second and third, fourth years?
That varies from school to school,
okay.
And I certainly wouldn't want to make a blanket statement, but yes, that does happen, and it's an important question for families to ask.
Well, so when how is it being? I guess how's that? Is that a big point, or does it make the students feel great? How are you sharing that information?
Well, we have certainly publicized it on our website. Our admission office, in its travels around the country, talk about our new approach to the price of a Sewanee degree, and I have to say that the publicity has been favorable. The first year after the announcement, we saw an increase in visits by over 60%. We're in a somewhat remote and rural location. We're not a place you go through and route to somewhere else, and so it's important for us that people come and actually see this campus fully to appreciate it. Our visits went up. Our applications.
Hey, John, I apologize. I'm going to have to interrupt you right here because I just realized we need to take a break, but we'll be right back on College Smart Radio. And our guest today is John McCardell, President and Vice Chancellor at Sewanee. We'll be right back on College Smart Radio.
For more information on today's topic, visit collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. College Smart Radio continues in moments on AM 1220 KDOW. Contact Beatrice Schultz at collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. Now, back to College Smart Radio with your host Beatrice Schultz on AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of college. I'm Beatrice Schultz. I'm talking with my guest, John McCardell, the president of Sewanee, the University of the South, about the problems with the current college pricing model. John was sharing with us that Sewanee has started price cut their prices at Sewanee by 10% and have started to guarantee that the cost for tuition and room and board will not increase over 4 years. It's a big deal. We all know that college is expensive and will most likely be some of the most costly years for a family. So understanding how to navigate the college process, the selection process, and save everywhere you can is going to be a very smart thing to know. And to help families be on this radio show, I host community workshops live and via webinar several times a month that explain the cost of various colleges, how the financial aid system works, and things to consider to prepare yourself for this tremendous expense. You can find my workshop schedule and register at collegesmartradio.com. John, we were just, before I cut you off at the break, you were talking about the fact that you have found that has been a big push and you've had a lot more demand at Sewanee or application process.
We have indeed. Visits were up by 60%. Our applications jumped from 2,900 to almost 3,400. Selectivity and yield have improved, and the composition of our student body has become much more national as a result. So we're very pleased with the response that we've gotten.
That's great. And just for our audience, I thought it would be good to share exactly what the cost is, I don't know if you want to call it what the total cost is for education, and then a little bit about your financial aid or how many of your students are getting financial aid today at Sewanee.
Well, yes. It's a little more complicated answer, of course, because our tuition and fees are tiered, so it depends on what class you belong to. There are actually 4 different fees that students might pay next year,
sure,
depending on what class they're in. What I can say is that in the current academic year, about 80% of our students received some form of aid. The average aid package was around $28,500, and the tuition and fees that we will be charging students entering this coming fall will be $45,900, and that, as I say, will be guaranteed for 4 years.
And I think for our audience that's listening in and listening into some of the other College Smart Radio shows, it's so looking at when we think about private schools, there is such a range of what you can spend, and some of the private schools can be as much as $70,000 now. But if we look at some of the private school like Sewanee, a liberal arts school that many may not be familiar with, if you're someone who is eligible and may qualify for financial aid, then you could well go to Sewanee for the cost that you might pay for a public university here in California. And that's something I always want families to understand. Some families will qualify and some won't, but for those that do, it's great to know that there is aid that may be available and to kind of understand how that process works. As I said earlier in the show, California state schools are $25,000, the UCs are $35,000, and the private schools in California are very expensive, on average $50,000. So it's Sewanee, I right from that perspective, has a nice value proposition.
Well, let me pick up on that point. One of the things I discovered when I came here is that we were losing more students in head-to-head admission competition, actually not to other liberal arts colleges, but to public universities. And so a part of our strategy in reducing our tuition and fees was to make us more competitive with at least the out-of-state fees charged by our public neighbors. And I think that's had a positive effect as well. You're absolutely right that when families are trying to make decisions about where to send sons and daughters to school, they need to look at what the aid packages are likely to be and what the net price is likely to turn out to be. They also need to ask themselves questions such as, can I graduate in 4 years? Can I get the courses I want when I want them? Will I have access to the equipment and the facilities and the faculty? And when you line all those questions up, in fact, the private liberal arts colleges often stack up very, very well.
I would imagine it's very true. When we look at the statistics for some of the public schools here in California, that only 30 to 50% of the kids, and most of it's more like 30 to 40%, are graduating in 4 years. So for Sewanee, how many kids are graduating in 4 years? Well,
our retention rate from first semester to second semester of the current freshman class was something like 98%. So that's a good omen. Our graduation rate over 6 years is somewhere between 85 and 86%, and so we take very seriously our obligation to see students through their 4 years and to retain them and keep them moving along.
Now, you did say that you're coming from a smaller town, so are there on-campus jobs also available? Do you have work and studies, or are there jobs available for students who could be working while they're in college at Sewanee?
Absolutely. Yes, there certainly are, and those students do everything from working in the library to working with our dining service to helping out with faculty members in the labs. There is plenty of student employment.
Great. One of the things that you mentioned during the break is we talked a little bit about, I guess, the statement of private higher education and financial unsustainability are on a collision course. Do you want to talk a little bit about that from your knowledge about the whole system?
Well, I have to believe that we simply cannot, in the private education sector, continue to expect the public to bear annual rates of tuition increase in the 4, 5, 6% range. And there are, to be sure, some institutions that have ample resources and long lines at their admission office. And so for them, for those elite institutions, I suppose they can continue to raise their prices and still admit a good, strong class. But even they eventually are going to hit that ceiling, are going to hit that barrier. And I think that before the crisis strikes, institutions would be well advised to plan in some way for how they're going to deal with that resistance to high tuition that I think we're already beginning to see in the public, and that is not likely to decrease in the years ahead.
Well, I think it's just insane because so many parents just they can't even really believe it. They just never imagined 18 years ago it would cost this much for education for their kids. And many families were hit by economic downturns. Even the families that thought they were saving money didn't save enough for college. It's a big deal. And out here in California, we've got families that have one need they do have is equity in their homes because it's super expensive to live here. And so we really, people are in this, I think they're in this financial collision already. And so it's really overwhelming. And that whole idea that supply and demand will allow the colleges to keep raising prices, at some point that demand is starting to go down because people are worried about the value of spending all this money on their education.
Well, not only that, we also know, as some wise person once put it, we also know how many 18-year-olds they're going to be 18 years from now. And we know that just the number of the traditional college-age population is beginning to decline. That's a demographic reality. Besides which, families are also now challenged in many cases to find dollars for secondary education and also for graduate school. And so it isn't as if the tuition for the baccalaureate degree is the only tuition they're necessarily having to worry about. There are competing demands on tuition dollars at other levels of education as well.
That's a great point. That there are going to be less kids. So the universities really do have to manage that. Now, when you get your research, or how you kind of do you work with other colleges? Is there associations that are talking about this? Can we expect that this will be a trend that is going to be changing, that Sewanee will help to lead, or should I be expecting more and more colleges are going to be trying to follow this type of model?
Well, I hope so. I've been a little bit surprised to see how little has happened in at least our particular sector of higher education. There have been some institutions that have made some modest steps to reduce or to freeze their tuitions, but in many cases those are conditional and need to be studied before you can understand if they apply to you. I do think that there is a growing sense among many of us in higher education that while merit scholarships are never going to be abandoned, the discount coupons that we think may give us an edge if we were to cut by, say, $3,000 or $5,000, as I said before, that's not a particularly efficient or just allocation of dollars. We're better off deploying those dollars to meet need. And I think there is a growing resistance among many schools like ours to awarding these discount coupons more or less willy-nilly to those parents and families who simply dicker the hardest. We make an offer at Sewanee, and we say to a family, though it sometimes gives our admissions office heartburn, this is our offer, and if you think the place up the road that's offering you more is a better fit for you, well, why don't you just go there?
You know what? I thank you for sharing that, actually, John. That was a great final point, because we're going to unfortunately come to the end of the show, but this dickering, as you call it, I love that term, or what we call the appeal process, is just, it's crazy. It's crazy what's going on out there, and some people don't know, some people do, and some colleges are managing it. But thank you so much for being with us today on College Smart Radio, John.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Beatrice.
Thank you. So to learn more about Sewanee, you can find a link on our website, collegesmartradio.com, to the Sewanee website. And we've also posted an article provided by John discussing many of the issues we brought up on today's show with links of the reference publication on our website. Well, that wraps up another weekly show of College Smart Radio. You can hear us each day at 1220 KDOW, Saturdays at 3 p.m. We hope you picked up some new information today that helps you figure out ways to manage the runaway costs of college. For a link to a podcast of this show and our prior weekly shows, go to our website, collegesmartradio.com. In addition to the podcast, you'll also find a schedule of our upcoming shows. This is Beatrice Schultz. Thanks for tuning in to College Smart Radio. We look forward to sharing more helpful information with you next week.
You've been listening to College Smart Radio with Certified Financial Planner Beatrice Schultz. If you have questions on today's topic, log on to collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. That's 650-587-1559. Join us next week at this time for another edition of College Smart Radio on AM 1220 KDOW.